Hello, my friends. Hello, it's Matthew Street, and welcome to my channel. As always, I truly appreciate you being here, and welcome on this early Friday morning, November 29th. And I am here to do my official review and opinion about the brand new Beatles documentary on Disney Plus, just premiered today, called Beatles 64, produced by Martin Scorsese, directed by David Tedeschi. The film is 1 hour and 46 minutes long, and I'm sure it'll be streaming for quite some time on Disney Plus, so check it out. Now, I'm going to try to make this review as brief as possible because, folks, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of notes here, but don't worry, I'm not going to go through all those notes. These are just notes I took to get some things, some highlights, things I wanted to touch upon. And I've condensed that down into a few things. And then I watched the the documentary again. So I've seen it twice now. And so I think I'm able to come to some conclusions here for you. So I'm going to condense it down for you. Let me start with my little intro here. Recipe for success. We've always heard that term before. A recipe for success. And I have to be honest with you, anything that has the Beatles in it, as far as I'm concerned, is going to be the main ingredient for a recipe for success, right? I mean, if you have the Beatles in something, whether it be music or visual or whatever, it's going to be successful. But then you add more to your little recipe, okay? You got the Beatles, but then you add Wingnut Productions, Peter Jackson's production, cleaning up visuals, doing demixing of sound. Then you have Giles Martin helping with the remixing of the sound. You have a producer like Martin Scorsese, a celebrated, director, producer, Hollywood mogul, whatever. He's huge. David Tedeschi as director. That's a nice ingredient for the recipe. And then you take in the fervor of the 60th anniversary of the Beatles' arrival to America. You've taken the fact that Ed Sullivan, how they came to America, 73 million viewers watch Ed Sullivan. You have the first U.S. concert in the Washington Coliseum. So you have all these ingredients culminating with this Beatles 64 documentary. So you would think it should be unreal, like, oh my goodness, you got the Beatles, instant success, and then you add all those other ingredients to your little recipe, and you think, oh my goodness, this is going to be absolutely unbelievable. There's going to be excitement beyond belief, and there was, because when I heard about this special coming, I was very excited. You heard me in some of my earlier videos about this coming up. I was all beside myself with excitement. I couldn't wait for it. Well, unfortunately, folks, no. Sometimes when you have a lot of different things, it isn't always going to be a recipe for success, I've learned. So let me just say this in a nutshell, and then if you want to leave, you can leave, or you can stay for a couple little dribs and drabs here. This new documentary, Beatles 64, this is my, nutshell thought. Although it's well done, it's very nice to have it. I'm pleased we have something on the 60th anniversary like this. My initial reaction upon finishing viewing it for the second time, I watched it twice through, got up very early this morning. Okay, I won't tell you what time, you'll think I'm crazy. I'm a bit disappointed and underwhelmed by it. Okay? Again, let me repeat. Very well done. I'm very happy to have it. Nice to have something, especially for newer fans, people that didn't experience the excitement of Beatlemania. I'm happy to have it here. Any new product involving the Beatles is fine with me. However, this documentary, when you take it down to its essence, a little disappointing and a little underwhelming, okay? Folks, the biggest problem here is when you've experienced things like this film before, the entire Washington Coliseum concert, when you've experienced watching all the Ed Sullivan shows in their entirety and complete, and especially for me, going back 30 plus years ago, experiencing this film, the Beatles' first U.S. visit, which was like 2 hours long or close to it. When you've experienced that and you've had that, and many of you Beatle fans will understand where I'm coming from, when you've had that, And then you get this new Beatles 64 documentary. You can't help but being disappointed, folks, because it can't hold a candle to the completeness, the consistency, and the fullness and richness of those three films or those three items. They're trying to cram in an hour and 46 minutes too much. It's too choppy. You get too many talking heads, and although they're very nice, they have all nice things to say, but to me, the talking heads add very little to the overall vibe. I want to be, when I'm watching a film like this, when I heard this film was coming, Beatles 64, I wanted to be immersed in 1964. You know, when you watch the Beatles' US visit, you are immersed into that time because it's just, the bulk of the material is just a consistent chronological order of the Beatles' arrival to America. Boom, what happened? They went to the hotel. Boom, rehearsals. Boom, Ed Sullivan show. Boom, on the train. Boom, Washington. Boom, the concert. Boom, train. Boom, Miami. You know, it's very chronological and it's full and rich of material, sounds, and beautiful music. This thing is just, they're trying to, too many quick clip cuts. It bounces all over the place, okay? It's more concerned with getting a particular message in or doing this and doing that than the Beatles at times. Like, instead of being, the spotlight should be on the Beatles and them, and it's not. It jumps around a lot. A couple of quick things. I mean, it starts out basically with the Kennedy assassination and the aftermath of that, how it affected the country. And the first thing you notice is that the black and white footage has been totally restored, and it's very stunning looking. I won't say it blew me away because, you know, some of the footage I've seen in these two DVDs before, it's pretty darn good. And this may improve upon the footage a little bit, but it was good. Don't get me wrong, but it didn't I thought I was going to be blown away by the visuals, and they're great, but they're okay. The sound is great. They've definitely demixed well and cleaned up the sound, not only of the music, but of the voices. You can hear what the Beatles are saying a little better. If you're here for the music, folks, you're not going to get a lot of complete music here on this documentary. Yeah, they start out, I mean, footage starts with Washington Coliseum and She Loves You. And it's like, wait a minute, they weren't there yet for a few more days. Why not start? I don't know. Anyway, folks, I get they're trying to tell a story here, but it just was too inconsistent and too choppy and jumping around. She Loves You is only partial. And then clips come in and out of different things. Interviews with Paul and Ringo were nice to have, but, you know, Paul tells the same old stories about, you know, he's with the front room and his dad heard them doing She Loves You. And he said, instead of yes, yes, yeah, 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 can it be yes, yes, yes? You know, the Americanisms, the same stories. There was a nice brief segment with a original fan who they have an image of in front of the Plaza Hotel named Vicky Brenna Costa. And she is shown and talks about the Beatles a little bit, and I really enjoyed that. I would have liked to hear from more original fans rather than some of the celebrity talking heads, but that was fine. But like I said, we get 22 minutes into this thing, and we've only had one real song so far, which was She Loves You, and that was only a partial. And then there's a whole segment on Jack Douglas. Great to have him in there, but on his story about how he snuck over to Liverpool on a boat and got off the boat and made all the papers over there, and that ties in later. How when John hooked up with him, you know, in the 70s as an engineer and a producer, how he remembered that story for that, which is all nice stories and nice little sidetracks and things like that. But this is Beatles 64, and I was expecting a full, detailed documentary about the Beatles in 64 to immerse me in that time, not take me in all these little tangents and sidetracks all over the place. But that's just me, okay? First 30 plus minutes into it, I have a note here, and there's very little of the Maisels brothers footage and real solid Beatles music, and we're 30 minutes in already. And I wrote another note over here. Where's the Beatles music live? You got all this, Washington Coliseum, all this Ed Sullivan, and we're 43 minutes in, and I'm starting to get bored with this thing. To be honest with you, I was like, maybe as an original fan and as somebody who's seen it all and heard it all with the Beatles and loved them so much, but I was 43 and plus minutes into this documentary. I was like, yeah, okay. I was kind of meh. I was like, oh, it's good. I mean, I don't know. But the footage is nice. It's cleaned up. The sound is great. But the storyline and editing, again, I keep going back to that term, choppy, inconsistent, jumping from one thing to the other, never staying on something long enough that you can really immerse yourself in the moment, no matter what it is, whether it's an interview, or not just the Beatles, an interview with someone else, or a side storyline about something else, or the Beatles themselves, or a live performance. You're never there long enough where you can really immerse yourself into it. There's a nice little brief segment where it's a sound clip of the Maysles brothers film where it's not a visual, but verbal. You hear George talking about the original version of Got My Mind Set on You, and they play a clip of Got My Mind Set on You. That was kind of cool because, years later, George took that song to #1 with a cover on his great Cloud 9 album. So that was kind of a neat little bit when they had that. But we're now halfway through this documentary. We're finally getting to the Ed Sullivan show. We're finally getting to the point where they're going to be featured on Ed Sullivan. And I was like, okay, whatever. But no, right when you think you're going to get to Ed Sullivan, they might flash some music. You jump to how the importance of television is at the time for a brief couple of minutes. Okay, then Ed Sullivan. And instead of it kicking off with, and now the Beatles, and all my loving with the arrows coming in, no, I saw her standing there from the second segment of Ed Sullivan, and it does the clips with the Gonzalez family watching from their apartment in New York City. And, the Sullivan material looks fantastic. It sounds fantastic. Like I said, nothing wrong with the sound or visuals in this thing. They've all been cleaned up and they look fantastic, but unfortunately everything's incomplete and there's too little of the Maysles footage or Sullivan footage or Washington Coliseum. There's too little of it. There's not enough in here. They show a clip of I Want to Hold Your Hand from Ed Sullivan, but it's not complete. All right, and it's only the end part of the song. Too brief, I got another note here, and I mentioned this, too brief with the clips. They'll get on something, but they're not there long enough. Maysles Brothers stuff looks great. Sound and images look great. We get to the hour and 6-minute mark, and finally Washington Coliseum arriving to the concert, and then Ringo's talking about it a little bit, and then finally back to the show, and you get From Me to You, and this is the first complete song in this entire documentary, is From Me to You from the Washington Coliseum, and it's very good. I mean, it looks great, but I have to be honest with you, I've seen clips of the Washington Coliseum on YouTube that look very similar in quality as far as the visuals, but I have to say the sound was fantastic. What they've done with the sound in this documentary is unbelievable. But footage-wise, yeah, it was great. It's clean, it looks good, but I wasn't blown away by it like I thought I would be. So From Me to You, first complete song, and that's at the hour and 10-minute mark. Harry Benson is featured in here with a little interview. That's all nice. David Lynch, the filmmaker. There's a lot of talking heads. I won't name them all. Then we get to Long Tall Sally, which is one of the better parts of the documentary because it's complete and the sound is phenomenal on Long Tall Sally. So that's fantastic. A nice thing to see, but there should have been more of that in this, folks. It really should have. Segment about Carnegie Hall, talking to Sid Bernstein and how that all came about. That's nice. More talking heads that squawk a lot, say a lot of things, trying to be important or speak about important issues. And you're just like, let's get to the Beatles, okay? Let's get. Maybe I sound like a whiner, folks, but I don't know. Twist and shout from the final Sullivan appearance, but then a talking head interrupts it. And so the sound and image are great on Twist and Shout, but it gets interrupted. It's like Paul interviewed today about how the U.S. needed the Beatles to lift them out of a period of mourning after JFK's assassination. That's towards the end of the documentary. That's a nice little quote from Paul. Then you jump to Miami suddenly. Miami's right near the end of the documentary. It's boom, 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 quick. But you do get This Boy from Miami, which sounds great and looks fantastic, but then it cuts in for pictures during it and an interview. I think Paul speaks during it too, so you're not getting the complete This Boy. I was like, WTF, come on. What a beautiful moment that could have been, and it gets kind of cut up a little bit. Again, at the end, Jack Douglas comes back and ties in that whole thing about him on his trip to Liverpool during the 60s, and how they made the papers in Liverpool, and it cuts back to how him and John bonded over that because John remembered him from the papers, which is all nice and all that, but it's like, I want to be immersed in 64. This is Beatles 64. Let's take an immersion trip into that. What's all these sidetracks? John kind of gives the final thoughts of the documentary before the credits. He kind of, makes a little final statement at the end. I won't spoil it for you, but talks about the impact of the Beatles, and they allow John to do that with an older interview. And then the credits start to roll, and it's with Roll Over Beethoven from Washington Coliseum, which is pretty complete from what I remember. But it's shot from one angle. Like, instead of doing the regular Washington Coliseum footage, it's the Maysles brothers footage from up in the crowd looking down on the stage when they kick into Roll Over Beethoven, which was the first song from that concert. And they do a long shot, and then they slowly zoom in with the one camera shot, and then you go on to George, and then Paul, John, Ringo, and then back a little bit. And then all of a sudden, right near the end, it flashes away the camera to one of the Maysles brother doing the little sound thing on the microphone, boom, like that, and then it kind of ends after that. So, folks, nice to have, yes. Is there consistency to it? Not really. I don't know. I just felt it was too jumpy. You couldn't get into a groove with this thing. You'd start getting into something, then all of a sudden it jumps to something else, something totally different, thing, or a different talking head, or a different topic. And I don't know. I just, I understand it. They've got to try to do something all encompassing that will attract newer fans, newer viewers, casual viewers. I get it. But I'm sorry, folks. I could talk about Sullivan all day. I could talk about the Washington Coliseum concert all day, which you can get, especially with the Washington Coliseum, on YouTube in complete form. I did a review on it not too long ago. But this thing right here, just, there's no talking heads in this. All right. There's no cutting off songs in this. They're complete. They're here. You can see the whole performance of what they put in that. Again, I'm going to get out of here. I just want to say, nice to have this. As I said, going back to the beginning here now, nice to have. Well done. You got an all-star cast here putting this thing together. But unfortunately, I was just a little disappointed in it, folks, and a little bit underwhelmed by it. It didn't knock my socks off as I thought it would. But please don't take me wrong on this. Happy to have it. Happy to see it. I mean, I'm hoping my kids watch it, and other people that are casual fans that I know, I will recommend it to them to get into that vibe of that time a little bit. But if it just, for me as a fan who's seen it all, heard it all, maybe I'm coming from a different perspective, and I have to respect that for me, it was disappointing, but I understand for you younger fans out there, newer fans and whatnot, you may be blown away by this thing. I don't know. So let me know what you think. But again, that's it from me, Matthew Street. Nice to have it, but meh, okay. Thanks. Love you all. Bye-bye.